That little guy has to buy a ticket. That was a quote from Quentin Tarantino when he was doing an interview for Django.
Oh, that's right.
Spike Lee was like talking trash about the movie, but he hadn't seen it. I just thought it was so goofy, but yeah, there we go.
Welcome, everyone. We're back. We're here. Awful Takes episode 30.
30. God.
That's insane. It's weird to think about. Each week goes by and I'm like, oh, it's another episode and it's in the can and it's done, you know? It's just something that I'm still processing how we're moving along with this. But it's cool. I really am happy to be here and excited. So thank you all for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, this is a show where we talk about movies, music, and give our opinions and our awful takes for you guys to hear. I quantify everything that I say as an awful take because I don't really know what I'm talking about. But in the way in which I go about it, I may come off like I do. But trust me, I don't know what I'm talking about, especially with music and film, because I don't make movies. I don't write music. And here I am telling you guys what to think.
Who are you?
My name is Nabahi.
Hello, I'm Wallied from Sergita Productions.
And we are going to jump straight into it. We have a great movie that I recommended. It is going to be our first Quentin Tarantino movie that we have talked about.
It's crazy.
Surprisingly, we've talked about him a lot on this show, but this is going to be the first movie. This one's an important one for me. A lot of times with my favorite directors, my ranking can go based on how I'm feeling with what I think is their best movie, my personal favorite. However, with this movie in particular, it has stayed consistently at the top of my list for him for years now.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I don't know. When it came out, it's not like I was thinking I wasn't going to like it, but I wasn't too excited the first time it was coming out. Obviously, I was into Westerns and I love Tarantino. And I just thought it was going to be kind of straightforward. And, you know, judging by the story and everything, I didn't really think there was going to be too much to it. But man, was I wrong. And man, did this movie impress me. And man, does this movie still impress me every time I watch it. It's like over 2.5 hours yet. I swear this has to be the most well-paced movie at that length that I've ever seen, because each time I watch it, it doesn't even feel like 2.5 hours go by. For me personally, it just feels seamless, and it has a consistent pace that just keeps you so ingrained in the story and everything. And man, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and probably one of my favorite Westerns of all time too. I just can't get enough of this movie. I'm so excited to talk about it. There's so many things to love and appreciate, and it's crazy. It's already been pretty much over 13 years since this movie came out. And I don't know, you still hear it talked about. It gets brought up pretty consistently, and it is worth talking about. Wallied, I guess, what was your experience with this movie? Did you see it when it first came out?
So I hadn't seen it until the pandemic when I got more into Quentin Tarantino. So I kind of just binged through pretty much like all of his films during that summer. So I had watched like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Inglourious Bastards, Kill Bill 1 and 2. And then Django was actually one of the last ones I had saw at like the end of 2020. And I remember really loving it a lot. I thought the shift at first was a little bit jarring to me at first, but then I saw it a second time and I ended up loving it a lot more than the first time. And after 2020, I hadn't seen it since then. And this is kind of one that I would kind of think about the most, and the one that I kind of rewatched the most out of Tarantino's filmography. So this was definitely the one that like I loved, but I had loved some of his other movies a little bit more. So this was fun to like rewatch again and just kind of find like a new appreciation for like almost 5 years later, which is crazy to think. But yeah, no, I loved it the first time, but there was other films of his I loved a little bit more before rewatching it for this episode.
Nice. If you haven't seen it, guys, we're going to be getting fully into this movie. So please go out and watch it if you haven't seen or heard of it by now. It is well worth the time. I would be shocked if you didn't come out at least, remembering some parts of this movie, because they're just absolutely great. But yeah, so full spoiler discussion. All right. The movie opens in kind of typical Tarantino fashion. Obviously, you have the opening credits, which is something that I've grown to appreciate with him.
I love his opening credits a lot.
Like he does a great job, and it's so cool to see that still happen in movies, because nowadays, usually opening credits are just kind of like people don't really focus.
They're kind of forgettable a lot of the time. But the music and just like the fonts and like that red is just like, oh my God.
And he makes it incredible. So stylistic. He adds flair, and he mentions pretty much everyone you're going to see in the movie, especially I noticed that watching Inglourious Bastards, like, he lists like 30 credits for actors, and it's like people who have small roles in the movie. And I don't know, I appreciate that so much with him. So this movie starts in that same fashion. However, you're getting visuals of this chain gang walking through the wilderness, being escorted by these, kind of caretakers, security people, basically slavers. And they're running them pretty much throughout this, all these landscape shots. And it's just such a dramatic, great opening. And seeing, so one thing we're going to have to mention is the authenticity that he shows these slaves and how they're treated is needed. I feel like if that wasn't in this movie and you kind of strayed away from the authentic side of that, and you maybe try to get around that in a certain way, it wouldn't make the payoffs in this movie feel that great, because that's one thing I noticed with Django as a hero. You're rooting for him because you see the brutality and what these guys go through. They don't shy away from it. So when he starts getting his vengeance story and paying back, blood for blood, you're rooting for it because you know what these guys are going through.
Right, yeah.
So it is a very kind of brutal opening, seeing obviously these slaves being taken across the land and they don't really have anything, So yeah, it's just such a stark kind of opening. But that is something I wanted to mention with this movie in general is I am glad Tarantino is the one directing it, because had it been another director, they maybe would have tried to get around this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just focus on this vengeance story, this revenge story, So anyways, past the opening, we get introduced to our second main lead. Christoph Waltz is returning as Dr. King Schultz.
He's always the German guy in Tarantino's movies.
And I swear, when this happened in the movie, it was me, my brother, and my sister. We like bursted out laughing, but I felt like we were the only ones. There's a shot that switches to a close-up of one of these slavers, and it zooms in like on his face. And the actor, I don't know, he's like smiling and he's like, who's that stumbling around in the dark? He's all, state your business or prepare to get winged. I don't know why I laugh every time I see that. I just feel like this guy's enjoying himself way too much. And it's kind of funny. It's like an over the top kind of Tarantino character,
Yeah.
And just that shot of him. One thing I'm going to mention right now is the zoom ins in this movie are so amazing.
Gold.
They are perfectly like comedically timed. They add so much like kind of drama. They add, and again, like it's something I really don't like zooms that much in movies. I feel like kind of is just like, okay.
Yeah.
The way Tarantino uses them is really great. So yeah, Dr. King Schultz rolls up. You see the silhouette of him on this wagon, and you see like this tooth kind of moving around on top. It's like on a spring, and it's never outright mentioned. It's never really given like its own steady shot, But the fact that you always see it in the wagon shots and like the peripheral, just like this tooth moving back and forth, is so funny. And it adds a lot of like character to this German dentist. I don't know why there's a German dentist in this movie, but man, does it work. And then there's this whole interaction between King Schultz and these slavers. He's trying to get basically one of these slaves have information pertaining to a bounty that he's trying to find. So he's trying to negotiate this whole deal basically. But intellectually, you can just tell that King Schultz is just on another level compared to these guys. Yeah. And to see this interaction try to happen is just so comedically funny. The dialogue is just so great. I don't know. I just love this whole first interaction. Wally, what were you thinking with this opening?
It's awesome. It really just sucks you into like the over the top nature of the film, and especially the more comedic side of the film that you don't really see too much later on. So I love that you get that like comedic side in like the first like 10, 20 minutes of the film, and it goes by so fast too. You get, I don't know what it is, but you get super invested so quickly on, and it's just like, it keeps you super, for me, it was like, I was just super on the edge of my seat and just like super tense throughout of like, okay, what's going to happen, you know? And I loved it so much. I love just how kind of fast talking he is too. I really love that character a lot. And I love just his interactions just with like the slavers and with the just the slaves in general, you know. I thought it was so hilarious. Yeah.
And very quickly you can tell there's small hints to it that King Schultz doesn't look down on these people, you know. He doesn't see them as anything less than him. There's some brief interactions with him in the beginning. He addresses them as people, you know, and you can already start to tell that this guy is different from probably everyone else in this area. So yeah, this is such a great opening, and already Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, they have great chemistry with each other. Even in this small little opening, Christoph Waltz and him, I'm just shocked every time I watch it how great their interaction and they play off each other. It just really feels authentic and it works really, really well. This is probably one of my favorite Jamie Foxx roles too.
I think it might be my favorite, honestly. It was like, for a while, I always said Baby Driver was like my favorite, but I think honestly, after watching it, I think it's this film. He just kills it. And I love his just evolution as like a character and everything. And the other thing too, I also really love with like their relationship is that it almost feels like a teacher mentor type of relationship, which I really love, especially in like the first half, and him kind of like teaching Django like all of these like different techniques of how to like get out of situations. You know, it's a great like little foreshadowing tool that like comes into play later.
So then we see the two sides of Tarantino. You have the brutalistic, realistic portrayal of violence in this movie, with obviously the slaves and how they're treated. And then you have the over-the-top cathartic violence that Tarantino just loves to do. And I swear, the fact that he puts both in his movies is pretty amazing, and it's pretty shocking. So Christoph Waltz is trying to negotiate this deal, Dr. King Schultz, and he can't. He's basically not going to get it. These guys don't want to give up any of their slaves to him. So he takes it in his own hands and he just simply blows the head off this horse and shoots one of the other guys. And the amount of blood you see in this is insane.
It still shocks me. It's like I said, this is like my third time watching it, and I still get like, I still jump and get shocked every time I see it. I'm like, holy cow, that's a lot of blood.
It's insane, and it's obviously very stylistically done.
Of course,
I personally enjoy it. I like it when movies kind of show that side of like the violence and everything, but I think Tarantino takes it a step further and goes for really graphic out there kind of violence to kind of show the movie side that obviously this is a movie.
It's not real, you know? And it's playing into like the aesthetics of like those samurai films where they have blood spraying like crazy, you know? So I almost kind of just see it as like an homage to those like early films that used to use graphic violence like that. So I really love, and it's tastefully done for me, in my opinion.
So yeah, he blows off the head of this horse, shoots one of the other guys, basically takes Django. But he also ends up paying the guy for Django, and he writes a receipt and everything, which is really funny. But it also kind of shows his character. He goes by the law.
He's very respectful, surprisingly, even after he killed them.
Yeah, and then the first part of pretty much the payback, he lets the slaves kind of do what they want to the guy. Gives him the keys and everything. And naturally, the slaves kill him, which shouldn't be a surprise. Then we cut to this whole sequence where they're going into town. And again, music, very great, very stylistic, some great shots of them kind of riding into town.
That's one thing I think Tarantino's just great with in general. It's just music choices. Like, you could tell the guy's like a very big music fan, you know? His
huge
music just fits the vibe and the tone so well of the film, easily for me.
He goes into this saloon, basically, and people are very shocked. You could tell in that whole intro sequence, them seeing...
is that a guy on a horse?
Them seeing a slave riding in on a horse is a big effing deal. And him going into this bar shocks the bartender, you know. But as you can tell, Dr. King Schultz, he doesn't pay no mind to it, you know. This isn't new to him, you know, which is very great. There's not a whole lot said too much about the way Christoph Waltz is thinking, but you can very much see it in the way he's treating Django.
His actions definitely like speak louder than words, for sure.
Again, he offers him a seat at the bar. He grabs him a beer, you know, he's talking to him like a normal person, you know, and he's very much, you can tell he has his mission, and Django has information that can help. But in this little intro sequence in this saloon, we get to at least one of my favorite comedic interactions in this movie. He tells him to go get the marshal, not the sheriff, the bartender. So then he runs, goes to grab him, and then he comes back, and this sheriff is like, basically like, what do you think, you're coming into my town and you're going to cause a ruckus, this and this. And it's this great shot. King Schultz just walks up to this guy, and then out of nowhere, you see this gun just like pop out of his sleeve, and he just shoots him. And he's like lying in the street, screaming in pain, like, ah. And then he just walks up to him and just shoots him in the head. And then everyone just starts screaming. There's this woman with like no leg, and she's got like this crutch. She starts like running away.
Oh, it's facts. I didn't notice that. Yeah.
And then he's like, now you can go get the marshal. I don't know why that to me was just so funny watching it the first time. Again, I'm trying to picture where this movie's going. And it was funny because obviously I was a big fan of Westerns and things. And you kind of picture it going in like a normal sense. You walk into a saloon, you meet someone, they give them information about a gang or whatever. And this movie's not playing out in that fashion. At no point did I expect them walking into the saloon that basically they were going to get held up by the sheriff and they were going to get held up by the marshal. But not only that, the entire town was going to end up pointing guns at this saloon because of what Schultz did. And the way these events unfold, I just was not expecting it. It was a nice subversion of like a normal Western, you know?
Yeah.
But obviously that ties into the story of it because he is taking a slave into probably one of the most racist areas you can ever imagine. So naturally there's going to be repercussions for that. I guess, Wallied, are you normally like a fan of Westerns, and did this kind of subvert any expectations you may have had?
For me, I'm not too familiar with a lot of Westerns. I've only maybe seen like one or two, but even then they're kind of like subverting the Western kind of expectations. But this for me kind of was like a big surprise, because usually when like a cowboy comes into town, you have that kind of style of like, all right, he comes into town and usually he's like the hero, but this one, it's like a lot lot different because it's like it definitely plays on like the race side of the film, which I was very surprised by for sure when I saw it. But yeah, it was a big surprise for sure, and it's kind of like you almost kind of see Django as more of like a vigilante or like kind of an anti-hero.
Yeah.
And same with Christoph Waltz's character. It's like these aren't people you usually would want to root for in like a Western, at least I would assume. It definitely was just like a big surprise for sure, you know.
And that's
I kind of love that.
One of my favorite things with Tarantino in his last 3 movies, with like this whole kind of rewriting history dynamic that he's been going for.
Right, yeah.
He goes for those kind of out there ideas and portrays them in a different way, but then he grounds them in a very realistic way as well. Obviously, with Inglourious Bastards, you know, they're basically a ragtag team trying to kill Hitler and all his higher commanders, you know, yet it's very grounded and he treats it in a very grounded way, you know. Same thing with this. It's like, well, okay, what if there was a slave trying to save his wife from basically a racist plantation owner? What challenges is he going to run into? And you can tell that Quentin very much sets the laws up in his world, but then he treats them in a respectful, realistic way. That's one thing that I love. Obviously, Django walking into the bar, bartender immediately has a problem with it. Django's riding into town. People are staring at him. They have a very big problem with what's going on.
Right, yeah.
And again, if this was maybe like a more inexperienced director or just like a normal kind of typical movie, they might just cut that out. We don't need that. We don't need to show all this. But again, it really shows that Tarantino cares about this world, you know?
Yeah.
And he's treating it by the laws and the way everything works, you know? And I just appreciate that so much because there's a very real respect there for this, you know? But yeah, this whole intro sequence is great. They go and get the marshal, and then King Schultz basically shows the intelligence side of him, that he was very much operating within the legal boundaries in which he was able to. You know, the marshal shows up, they throw out their guns, and they're standing there. And he basically lays down this whole thing of like, you know, this was a guy who was wanted. And one of my favorite moments is at the end. Such a great line. He's like, so in other ways, you owe me $200. And then the music starts playing and he can just tell he's like smirking at the marshal.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so
a great
funny.
interaction.
And 2 scenes in, I love King Schultz's character. I've seen a lot of memes more recently now of Christoph Waltz portrayed one of the most evil, villainistic people in history with Hans Landa.
Right.
And then in the next movie, he's a hero, you know, and he's
like a goofball, pretty much. Yeah.
And man, is it amazing that he won an Oscar for each role.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
It's
nice.
Amazing. But yeah, I love the whole sequence and everything.
I love the humor too. You know, it's like such a dark situation, but I love how a lot of it is kind of like played for laughs, you know, in such a serious situation, you know. I think that's like Tarantino does that surprisingly really well, especially in this movie.
No, definitely. So anyways, they find out that they have to go to this plantation where these basically outlaws are
Brittle Brothers.
The Brittle Brothers.
Yeah.
And Django knows who they are, and Christoph Waltz doesn't know exactly what they look like, so he needs Django to go with him, point them out.
Yeah.
He says, I'll kill them, we'll turn them in, and I'll give you part of the money as a reward. And you can tell that Django's very much learning through, like you said, it was teacher-student type relationship. You can tell that he's learning how bounties work. You can get money for bringing in people, killing people, you know?
Yeah. And it makes Django's arc just like really satisfying too to watch, you know, because it's like you're seeing him going from being a slave to just being like this gunslinging bounty hunter. Yeah. And it's just so satisfying to watch.
And there's not any outright mention of it until later on. There is a line that is said that Django has actually been watching King Schultz's actions this whole time. And they don't outright show him, you know, really reacting to it, but he has been watching the way King Schultz and what he does.
You see it through his body language for sure.
And there's a line uttered later on that we'll get to that very much kind of calls into question the way King Schultz was kind of operating. But anyways, they go to this plantation, and this is a great comedic moment. They're basically like, we're going to be putting on a character, and in this, we need to act a certain way to get these guys to go along with what we're doing.
It's like he's directing it. It's almost kind of meta.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
And then great comedic moment. Django's like, so you're going to let me pick out my own clothes? And then he's all, of course.
All the hats.
And then it cuts to Django riding in this blue, a shiny suit outfit. What a great. I
love the music that comes in too.
Yeah.
And I love just like that tracking shot. And it's so awesome. It's like so epic.
And he's just riding into this plantation and everything. And people just don't know what to think.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things is in this movie. Django's very much a fish out of water in this situation, and Tarantino chooses to show the reactions of people of just like, what the hell is this? You know? And it's just absolutely great. Here we get introduced to Big Daddy and his plantation.
Colonel Sanders looking guy.
This whole interaction is great. You can tell that Schultz, again, he's trying to do this in the right way. He's trying to play the part, very much put on a show, so that way they can get as close as they can to these people and subdue them, pretty much. Django, however, is driven not by that. He very much is still pissed off, rightfully so, at these people. So he's going about things in a different way. Not only that, he's getting memories brought up of how he was treated.
I love the flashbacks too. They don't show too much, but they definitely show it in like a really interesting way where like in one of them, it's like the color's like super oversaturated, which I really loved. And then I love how like in the other one, it's like a lot more like hazy and it almost kind of has this like nostalgic feel to it, which I really loved a lot. But yeah.
It hints at a lot. It does show some pretty graphic stuff very quick, but it does hint at a lot, which again, that's the authentic side that I don't think people were ready to see when this movie came out. One thing I'll touch on is in interviews, Tarantino was very clearly stating that this movie kind of helped spring off a dialogue about slavery. You know, how many times growing up in school when they talked about slavery, what was actually shown? You know, what were you actually taught about it? How long was that a topic, you know, when it's very much a big part of American history? And yeah, this movie really kind of helped open the doors to that conversation to start happening. One thing I want to address with the set design and obviously the production design, it shows these slaves in not just, you know, typical ways, you know, like they'll have muzzles on, they'll have like these contraptions around their necks, and they'll be like chained up and everything, and you hadn't really seen that in a movie about slaves up until this point. Obviously there was always a very clear like, oh, they were treated different, but this kind of shows you to the extent and what it was, you know, and it's never fully like discussed and it's never fully in front of your face. However, you can see it in the peripherals, like Chain Gang walking through and what they're wearing and stuff. It's just like, wow, like you really start to understand exactly what was going on at the time, you know, and you understand the stakes of this character, you know, what it could end up happening. Obviously, he's freed now, but, you know, some people might not be ready to accept that, and they're not going to take that as an answer. And obviously with the character Big Daddy, that is the case. Yeah. He doesn't accept that, and he doesn't allow that to stand, you know, and it shows that side of, you know, by definition, someone could be freed at that time, but will they necessarily get treated at that way? Not really.
Yeah. And especially in the flashbacks, they show like Django wearing like this kind of like mask thing and everything, you know, it's like
brutal.
It's almost like you kind of see it as like these slave owners almost treated them like animals, basically, like in a zoo, you know, and it's very hard to watch at times with that.
Yeah.
But,
so we get to this climactic point with Django. he's obviously seeing these Brittle brothers again. He knows exactly who they are and what they did. And he's had it, you know?
And I love that it just shows, doesn't tell, you know? You just see it with the flashbacks, like this is what they did, you know? It just like short and sweet and just like to the point, which I love so much.
Tarantino does that so well. Yeah. And then we get this great shot, music just building up. It's got like violins, crazy, and just shows Django walking really fast towards one of the Brittle brothers. And then he calls out to him because he's obviously whipping one of the slaves because she ended up dropping eggs or whatever, which is insane.
And I find it interesting too that guy also has like Bible pages on like his shirt and everything, you know? It's almost like, I don't know. What did you kind of take that away
I
as?
really see that as just kind of like a Tarantino-esque character of like over the top, kind of
over religious. That's kind of how I saw it. But
and then it shows this great shot. I swear, when I first saw this movie, this was one of the few movies that wasn't based around comics or anything like that. Where I heard audible cheering in the movie. I swear there's so many parts in this movie that people were clapping, they were cheering, they loved it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was the opening weekend in which I saw it. And that was one of the first few times I remember seeing that in a movie. And this obviously was one of the parts. It cuts to Django and he's standing there with this blue outfit on. And it's got like this heroic music and people were cheering. People loved it. And then obviously he grabs the whip. He just starts whipping him, and it's cathartic. Again, it's him getting payback. He ends up shooting him. He asks the slaves, he's like, you guys want to see something? And he just starts laying into him. And again, Schultz runs up. He's like, who are they? You know, he's killed these guys. And he's all, those are two of the brothers, you know, and he's like, where's the other one? And you see him like riding across the field.
Great perspective shot too. That was really awesome.
And the interaction's great. King Schultz is just like, you know, do you know him? Like, are you positive that's him? He's all,
what's positive? Yeah.
And he's like, it means, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm positive that's him. And just shot instantly. And you just see this red blood all over the flowers and you see him fall.
Beautiful shot.
Great shot. And again, at that moment, people were cheering. Like, really well. It was crazy.
That's one thing too I also really love about the film that I didn't even notice until I rewatched it, but like I noticed like Django, when he doesn't know a word, he'll usually just kind of like keep repeating it over and over again, and it kind of just shows you that like Django hasn't really learned a lot, like a lot of literature and like English and things like that. So it's like, it's really interesting to kind of see him throughout, like learning all these different words and everything, you know? And
then we get brought to the motivation, which for me is just a great moment. Very personal. It's just Django and Schultz eating by this fire. And Schultz pretty much asks him, so what are you going to do after all this, you know? And he's like, I'm going to go find my wife. And Schultz is like, I didn't know slaves could get married, you know? And he says he has a wife and tells Schultz her name, and it's Brunhilde. And you see something change in Schultz. And you can tell that now he has a responsibility. Obviously, with him being German, he tells him about this story of Brunhilde and this knight who goes to save her,
which is a fantastic foreshadowing thing that plays into later. I love it so much, and I didn't notice it until this watch, so that was awesome. But,
and it really just lays out what we're watching. This is kind of like an interpretation of a story like that.
Yeah, you know? It's a lot like a folk tale for sure, mixed with like this Western gunslinging like cowboy adventure.
And he goes through this story, and just the way he delivers this line and everything is just great. He's like, he goes through fire because he's not afraid of it. He slays the dragon because he's not afraid of it. And he does all that because Brunhilde's worth it, you know? And that you really much see the motivation behind Django. His saving his wife is number one. You know, there's nothing else more important than that to him. And for Schultz to see a real life kind of folktale playing out in front of his eyes, he feels a responsibility to help Django in that quest.
Yeah.
And he simply states, like, I can't let you go and do that because you'll very much end up dying. And he takes it upon himself to help him. So what their plan is to save up money throughout this kind of bounty hunting montage, which I just love.
The winter bounties.
And, save up money and obviously go to probably try to buy her back because they know this has to be done in the right way. Because if not, they're just going to hunt Django down and they're going to kill him. You really need to go about this in the right way. So then it cuts to this montage where they're obviously bounty hunting throughout the winter, and the music's great. I
love the little like text that comes up.
Yeah,
little scroll text. I'm usually not a big fan of scroll text, but that one worked for me.
So great. And the violence in this scene is insane. Just going through all these guys and everything.
Love the comedic nature of everything throughout too, especially with the guy they meet at like the cabin.
Yep.
I thought it was like really funny. And
it shows that Django is honing in his skills. Shows him like shooting the snowman and everything.
That was awesome.
And he's very much practicing, how to be a good shot and everything. And obviously Schultz is helping him. And you get the sense that he's setting up Django for the future. Past him, how does Django needs to be able to defend himself? So we get to the end of that, and there's a smaller interaction of them bounty hunting this one person. And they have a view on him over on this kind of mountain hilltop. And they're getting ready to shoot him. Django's getting ready to shoot him. And he's having a hard time. And we find out that the bounty's kid is pretty much right there with him working. Then we start to get into what I was talking about. Django moralistically he's not just violently lashing out against, people as a whole. It's only people who have wronged him,
Yeah.
And for him to take on this job of being a bounty hunter, it's hard,
It's like a sacrifice pretty much.
These people have families and things like that. And you could tell that he doesn't necessarily have a great way of, drawing that line. So it's hard for him. But he ends up doing it. Christoph Waltz basically tells him, like, this is what we do. We kill people and we sell their corpses for money. And he goes about it and he does it,
It is kind of hard to watch, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, I felt like, honestly, you almost kind of feel sympathetic towards like that person, and especially like his son and everything too. I was just like, I was not expecting the film to show that.
Yeah. And then throughout that, it ends, they've saved up enough money and now they're going to meet the head plantation owner where they think Broomhilda is being held. They don't know for sure that she's there, but it's a pretty big hunch that they're kind of just going to act on.
They're doing like a guess pretty much. Yeah.
Which I actually liked. I like that they don't know exactly where she's at. And
there's an uncertainty to it for sure, especially, and it keeps the audience kind of like wondering, like, what is she actually there? It keeps you guessing, which I love a lot.
So anyways, they they go there and we get introduced to one of the craziest Tarantino villains I've ever seen. An amazing performance in this movie. Leonardo DiCaprio is Calvin Candy. And what an introduction it is to show him in. He is watching Mandingo fighting basically in like a living room. You're watching these two slaves beat each other to death, and they're literally betting money on it. And man, is this part just graphic, brutal. And you can tell that Calvin loves it.
Yeah, he's psycho.
Yeah, it is really graphic. And he's trying to gauge who these people are. Obviously, they kind of go about this as like Schultz is trying to get into this business, the Mandingo fighting business. And Django is there as like his Mandingo expert. He knows a lot about fighting and things like that.
Yeah.
Because they very much realize, and I love this, very smart, they can't simply go up to Calvin Candy and offer to buy one of the slaves who speaks German. You know, it would just never happen.
It would just blow their cover.
Yeah. So they decided, well, let's kind of put on a Mandingo kind of cover that we want to buy some of these other slaves, so that way we can better entice Calvin Candy, you know, because if it was great dialogue. He's like, if, you know, someone offers to buy your prize horse or whatever, you know, they're not going to hear you out. That horse makes them tons of money, things like that. But if you offer to buy the stable, all of a sudden they're going to start treating you a lot differently. But obviously they don't have enough money to buy Candyland. And the fact that it's called Candyland is insane.
Yeah. That's a great dialogue scene, by the way. That was such an incredible scene. I don't know what it is with Tarantino and like his dialogue, but man, he just... God, it's like you're there with them in the conversation. It's awesome. But yeah.
Just going to apologize right up front. This is going to be going on a while. I just realized how far we're into this movie. But I'm sorry, guys. I just have to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
So anyways, it shows this graphic fighting, and Django starts to have a back and forth with Calvin Candy. And you can tell everyone in the room is accustomed to this violence and what they're seeing, besides Schultz. You know, you can tell that he has a very hard time sitting there watching this.
It's uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. There's a great little nod in this sequence, by the way. Django's at the bar, and this guy walks up to him, and he's all, "What's your name?" And he's like, "How do you spell it?" And he's all, "DJNGO." And he's like, "The D is silent." And the guy's like, "I know." And then he walks away. That is actually the original actor for the older Western Django movies.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it was served as like a little nod to that character, that this is also Django. You know?
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, this wasn't based off of that in any way, but Tarantino obviously loved those movies, so he kind of put in the actor as like a little nod.
Oh, right on.
That was really cool. Calvin Candy basically starts to question them very harshly of, what makes you such an expert? How are you guys are just getting into the game, yet you're coming to me to buy one of my fighters and this and this. So I'm not going to sell my best fighter. And this is where I was getting very nervous, and obviously my expectations were being subverted. Django's not afraid to push back on this guy at all. He very much, Calvin's like, I'm curious, what makes you such a Mandingo expert? And Django's like, I'm curious, what makes you so curious? And I was like, why is he saying this? He's gonna get killed. What
got some sass on him.
And throughout this whole travel to Candyland, Django has these moments where he's not gonna let these people disrespect him. But man, is it very scary. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. For all I know, they're going to get pissed off and they're going to try to shoot him or something.
Yeah.
But Calvin does like that side of Django. You can tell that he's caught off by it, but to him, it's very kind of entertaining to watch this guy act this way. There's some kind of ties, obviously, with like the fire-breathing dragon and the way Calvin smokes and he breathes the smoke out through his nose.
Oh, smacks.
Yeah. That's something that kind of caught on to where I was like, oh, okay. It's kind of like the story how there was this fire breathing dragon guarding Brunhilde. And I noticed that with like the smoke and everything. I was
got you. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So then they end up going to Candyland in this kind of long travel. This is something that, again, I wasn't expecting in a movie. I would expect them to just kind of cut to Candyland, but the travel towards there plays a lot into the tensions behind everything.
Yeah.
Something I love with Tarantino, he builds tension in such a great way that when things pop off and explode, you know that this has been building up for a while. And I feel like this whole travel towards Candyland is showing the building of tension between Django, Schultz, Calvin Candy, and once it pops off, it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
It's hit the fan.
I remember at first when I saw it, I remember not being too crazy about it just because I was like, wow, the film slowed down like a lot, you know? But rewatching it the past couple of times, I definitely felt the dread of that scene. And I definitely felt like on the edge of my seat of like, the slow burn of like having to travel with this psychopath pretty much and his gang pretty much. And it's like, I don't know. For me, I was just like really shocked just how much it was working for me this time around. And I really loved that drama. And I don't know, it definitely helps to like get more an idea like how their plan is going to work and seeing how far they can take the plan before they get there, which I really loved. And I love that interaction that Django and Christoph Waltz's characters have where it's like, you know, trying to not go too far with the performance, you know, which I feel like plays in a later, especially.
Definitely. We get introduced to an amazing performance and great character of, I think his name's Billy Crash, played by now famous, really kind of A-lister right now, Walton Goggins. And he does a great job. He is
first movie I think I saw him in, actually.
Same, yeah. He's really an evil, fucked up person. He's insanely racist. Yet he's kind of like that opposite to someone like Django. Obviously, the big bad of the movie is the obviously Calvin Candy, the plantation owner. But this is someone kind of on Django's level who's a gunslinger and things like that. But he very much has a problem with someone like Django riding around on a horse. Again, that is so base level, but even Django just being on a horse is a big fucking deal to these people.
Yeah. I love when he takes him off the horse too.
Yeah, it's so great.
Because he's like, oh yeah, do you know your reflex skills?
And again, this whole ride up to Candyland, it does slow down the pace, but again, I think it adds to that tension. Obviously, there's a scene where Django sees how they're treating one of these slaves. He's ran up in a tree, doesn't want to fight anymore, and Calvin is like, you know, I paid money for you, this is what I expect. And then he just has him ripped apart by these dogs, which is brutal and absolutely just horrifying. And it comes into play later.
Especially when Christoph Waltz's character is like, oh, I'll buy this slave, you know, but then Django's like, no, you know, and I love that he does that because it's almost like if he had done that, like that would have blown their whole cover and everything, you know. So it was like almost like a sacrifice pretty much they have to make, which is again one of the saddest scenes in the film for me because it's just like, my God, like this poor innocent man just got killed.
Yep. It's absolutely brutal. And you can tell that
it's crazy.
It doesn't faze Calvin at all. He's literally staring down Django's face, trying to get a reaction out of him while this whole in the audio you just hear in the background this guy getting mauled, and there's just this great scene of them just staring at each other, and it's just like, this guy's fucked up on a whole different level. But yeah, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, it's surprising how much like Tarantino can make you sympathize with characters you barely have that much time with, you know, especially like that. And I just, man, it's surprisingly so hard hitting, you know, like I feel like an inexperienced director, like you mentioned, would probably cut that scene out and be like, yeah, you don't need that there. But again, it just shows you kind of like the horror of Calvin Candy's character, I think really well in that scene.
And then the tensions obviously are building. Christoph Waltz is seeing this and the way they're treated. Django's seeing it. Calvin's putting on that to kind of front them, you know. And again, it's that building of tension of like, there's a whole lot more going on here than just simply trying to get, you know, their original intention to get the Django's wife. Now it's how these people are being treated and everything like that. They can't just simply pay no mind to it. You're watching horrible atrocities being committed. It's gonna have an effect on you, you know. And again, just elevates the tension. And that's how I kind of view this whole sequence, anyways. And then stylistically, we get to one of my favorite parts, I think, ever in a Western or movie. There's not a whole lot going on, but the dynamics and how they play at each other caught me off guard. And I remember kind of chuckling when I first saw it, and then rewatching it, I'm just like, that actually is really badass. And it really works. Django has this interaction with Walton Goggins, Billy Crash, and he's basically, they kind of have this upper kind of hand, like, oh, I'm going to be walking in the moonlight with you. And Django's like, you want to hold my hand?
Oh, yeah.
And then it cuts to this wide shot of these horses and this wagon just going through this, these tree lines and everything. And out of nowhere, this Rick Ross beat comes on and this music comes in. And I swear, I remember chuckling when I first saw it. And every time I rewatch it, I'm like, holy shit, this actually fucking works. I never, at one point when I was watching this movie, did I think a rap song would start playing. Not only that, did I expect it
to be a Rick Ross song.
It would be Rick Ross, and that I literally would love that shot. Just the shot of these guys on horses, and you're hearing rap music playing. I was like, what the fuck? Like, how do you come up with that? And not only that, how does it work so well? Wallied, obviously, this is one of the few rap songs in the movie, but when you saw that, was that just like a... It
was definitely a WTF moment for sure. At first I was kind of like, I don't know if that works all that well, but again, kind of rewatching it, it's like, actually it fits perfectly. It's a nice juxtaposition. I think that's something I think Tarantino in general has always been great with, is like juxtaposition in film. Yep. And it's like he could take songs that like on paper wouldn't work, but it fits the tone and vibe so perfectly that he's going for, that honestly I actually really love the choice. Again, not a big Rick Ross guy or anything, but I really loved that music choice.
I applaud it. I think this is one of the few original compositions for the movie.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly. I think I've heard that Jamie Foxx had the idea of like this song in his head of like this kind of humming, and then like this beat comes in. And then they ended up producing the song and got Rick Ross on it. But man, again, stylistically, you really can't get more of a defining fingerprint than this moment. This is just something that I don't think most people would have thought of.
No.
And again, it just blows my mind. I'm just like...
It's like when you dip a fry in a milkshake, it's like, it shouldn't work, but man, does it taste really good?
Exactly.
But yeah, that's how I feel about like the music and the scene. Great montage, awesome tracking shot too.
And it shows the shot of Django's wife kind of walking through the trees. And there's a lot of shots that kind of remind Django of why we're here. Why are we in this, Yeah.
And I love the line that Christoph Waltz gives him too, of like, don't lose your reasoning for why you came here, I love that. I think that plays such a big role. When later on, we'll get into it.
Yeah. They pause before they get to Candyland, and Christoph is like, I'm going to just put a word in my guy's ear before we get there. He's like, I expect we're going to kind of be in awe of what we see. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And you can tell though, this is kind of the first time that, Schultz is kind of mad at Django. He's like, you're yelling abuse at these slaves and these people, why are you acting this way? You're putting on this show. You're getting carried away with your retribution, which I believe is the line. And this is the line that plays into the fact that Django's been watching him this whole time. He's choosing what to kind of take away from that. And he very much kind of says that to Schultz. He's like, I recall a man who had me kill another man in front of his son.
And it shows like the contradictory and like flaw in his character, which I was surprised. I was like, wow, I really love that about the film. It's like, it shows you that like, sure, he's a great teacher, but he's not perfect.
He's not. Yeah. And so Django sees in all these interactions and he's just like, I've been watching, like, and I'm doing what I have to do. And it's just a great setup. And obviously, Schultz is like, let's just, we're here for a reason. And, you may be paraphrasing a bit, but yeah, maybe I did say something like that, which is a great setup. And then obviously they go to Candyland. Another great music montage scene of them riding up. You see all these people kind of staring and everything. And we get a great... Again, another great performance in this movie. We get Samuel Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Samuel Jackson as what's his name?
Steven.
And I love
or Snowball. They call him Snowball.
I love the slow-mo shot of him reacting, seeing Django. Just like this frown gets on his face and he gets like angry.
He looks like confused.
And this music's playing. And again, stylistically, this is like just defining moments that the director adds in of like, this is me. You know, this very much is me. I doubt anyone else could come in and kind of work their way around a scene like this. But already from one shot, you can tell that Steven has a very big problem with Django. And then obviously the dialogue starts happening, the interaction starts happening.
It's fantastic.
And Steven's very much like, what is this guy doing on this horse, you know? And then, but he plays very sweetly to Calvin. You can tell that he very much wants to be on Calvin's good side.
Yeah. And it's kind of ironic too. It's
so funny. I think it happens like 2 times where he's like addressing Calvin. He's like, I missed you, this. And then he's all, but what is this guy doing on this horse? You know? So it's kind of funny. You start to see the character kind of break apart of like, he's very much there for Calvin, but now he sees this other guy and he has a big problem with how he's being treated and how he acts, you know? Because for someone like him, he obviously did a lot of stuff up to that point to kind of become Calvin's kind of right-hand person. And to see someone on a horse not really work their way up for that privilege really does kind of bother him.
Oh, yeah.
Because it kind of calls into question all the stuff Steven had to do to get on Calvin's good side and to earn his trust. And to see someone else have that power, nope. It's a problem. Because again, even the fighters are brought in on chains. Even his prized possession, they're wearing chains and they're not being treated that great, you know. But yeah, great introduction, great interaction between Django and Steven. And yeah, he does. He's like, he's all, Snowball, you got a question about me, about my horse? You asked me. And Steven just loses it. It's so funny. Schultz brings up, you mentioned that you had a slave who spoke German, you know, and Calvin's like, yeah, go get Brunhilde. And Steven's like, she tried to run away while you were gone. So we have her kept in the hot box.
Jeez Louise.
This is a brutal scene.
My God.
Absolutely
hard to watch. Again, it's like, holy cow. Like,
but it does tie into character motivations. So for people who might have a problem with the violence and stuff that's portrayed, you kind of have to see it because Django is seeing it as well.
Yeah.
And it motivates him.
It shows that perspective, I think, really well, even if it's very hard to watch, like at times.
And it pushes him over the edge, you know, to see he's ready to kind of drop the charade right there and start shooting people, you know?
And you see it countless times, especially like in the dinner scene too. Like he's just ready to get out like the blaster and everything. It's just like, man, like he's willing to sacrifice everything for that, for her.
So past that point, we get to the kind of small interaction before the dinner scene. Schultz obviously talks to Brunhilde, says that, you know, they kind of set up a meeting between her and Django, which is a great moment. Obviously, it's their first time seeing each other in like a long time. And I'm pretty sure they probably set up in that we kind of need to play this part. We have to make sure that we play this right so that way they don't get the heads up on us, you know? And then it sets up this dinner scene. Also, there's some very interesting character moments. I guess Calvin Candy like loves his sister or something.
I don't know what that was, but yeah, he might love her a little bit too much. I don't know.
It's absolutely.
I'll just leave it there. I'll just leave it there. It's weird.
And it sets up this dinner scene. You have all these people sitting here, and this is a pinnacle moment. The dialogue exchange throughout this whole thing. Again, tensions are at an all-time high. And you can tell they keep going up. You're just like, man, something's not right.
I think for me, the scene that scared me, like terrified me the most was like definitely the skull with like the 3 dimples and everything. Oh my God. I just was like, it almost could be like a horror film in that scene
really,
because it's like, holy cow, like you really seeing this guy's like true colors and even more now with that scene.
So he breaks down this whole thing. They're trying to play this role. They're basically trying to leave there with, I think, one of the top 3 fighters, and then they're going to subtly kind of put in an offer for Broomhilda because Calvin does kind of see that Broomhilda and Schultz are kind of getting along. But obviously for Schultz, it's like he hasn't spoke German in a long time to kind of have someone to converse to. And his language is great. And then Calvin chooses, or Steven chooses, I think it was one of the two, to kind of show her lash marks on her back.
Yeah. Steven definitely
You don't
is,
really know it at the time, but obviously, like you said, Django's kind of reaching for his gun and everything. He wants to stop this whole thing, and Calvin's sister kind of ends up putting a stop to it. And then it has this great shot of Steven staring at Django, and you can tell that he's put it all together in his head. Django knows who Broomhilda is, so that must be the reason why they're here. And then he hints to Calvin to this whole situation. Calvin is having a hard time believing it at first, but he starts to realize,
oh, I'm being
tricked. And it's crazy. You see the intellectual side to Steven. He's like, they offered you that 12,000 that made you really nice, didn't it? And he's like, you're right, that did. But he's like, they're not here to buy that fighter, they're here to get her.
I love too in the dinner scene when like Steven's right there next to Calvin and he's all, oh, yep. He's just kind of repeating everything Calvin's saying. And he's just like this like so hype funny. Man. And I just, because there's like comedy in that scene too, even though it's so intense and terrifying, there's still like a sprinkle of comedy in there.
This whole dinner scene, again, like you are seeing acting on such a masterclass level. You have Christoph Waltz as Schultz acting, doing crazy, subtle performances. Then you got Samuel Jackson, veteran actor, just giving it his all, just totally just engrossed in this role.
Yeah.
And then you have Leonardo DiCaprio portraying the most evil, terrifying person
you can
ever
think of.
And all 3 of these guys are in the same scene with each other.
And then you have Jamie Foxx also too.
Yeah,
just like,
I'm just like, how did this happen? How did this happen? This is amazing. I swear this scene,
it's like lightning in a bottle. It's crazy.
Interaction, this whole dinner scene just was blowing my mind watching these 3 together. And I think
seeing him snap also, Calvin, like breaking the glass, which he actually broke his hand doing. And it's just like, my God.
Watching this movie, obviously there are standout roles, but I remember when award season was coming around, I was like, I really don't know who would win out of this movie. I was like, would it be
all of the
Leonardo
performances
DiCaprio?
are fantastic.
Would it be Samuel or would it be Christoph for supporting actor? That's how good all 3 of them were. And not only that, both Leonardo DiCaprio and Christoph Waltz got nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is crazy. Had Samuel Jackson been nominated, that would have been insane. But I really feel like they all deserved it because it is just amazing acting. And again, the tension's just building. And they bring in the skull. DiCaprio's pretty much like, we got you, and then he breaks the glass, he's ready to kill them all. Butch, his kind of bodyguard, walks in with like the shotgun. He's ready to blow them all up. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I
had no idea. I really didn't know if they were going to make it out.
I was terrified. They take their guns away and I'm just like, oh man, this is what is going to happen. And I remember thinking, wow, this whole movie, I really thought, I was like, oh, we're seeing again, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I'm seeing a Western, Tarantino.
Oh, it's a bit more straightforward.
Yeah. I was like,
no, it's not. Nope. It keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. Basically, they work out an exchange. Christoph Waltz had 12,000. They give it to him to free Broomhilda, and Calvin takes the money and he ends up selling her, which again, I was not expecting. They're all about to pretty much escape there. And then we get callbacks to a previous scene. The intro to the scene, there's this great harp that is playing
classical music.
Yeah, it's playing Mozart.
And we see this whole signing of basically Broomhilda's ownership. She's going to be free now, which is a great, rewarding moment.
Awesome.
Very, very cathartic watching this. And it's very brief. It show, again, the subtleties Christoph Waltz has is amazing. He's sitting in a chair, and you can tell he's very bothered by what's going on. And it shows brief cuts to the slave earlier getting mauled by dogs. And man, it's so brief, but seeing his reaction, everything is just great. And then Calvin's like, you're probably upset that I got the better of you, this and this. And he has this great interaction. I love this so much. He's just like, no, I was actually thinking about that, guy you fed to the dogs earlier today. I noticed his name was D'Artagnan. And I was wondering, what would Alexander Dumas think if he was there? And he was like, you doubt he would. Calvin's like, you would doubt he would approve. And he's like, yeah, I don't think he would. It was truly appalling what he had saw there. And Christoph Waltz has this great moment. DiCaprio, this whole time, Calvin Candy, he really kind of portrays himself as like this intellectually smart, superior person.
Yeah,
when he's actually not that smart. No. It's like a front,
he's almost like a fraud, basically,
pretty much. And Calvin has this great line. He's like, he's soft-hearted Frenchie. That's probably what Dumas was. And Christoph Schultz is like, actually, Alexander Dumas is black, which was a great moment.
That was a shock.
You see DiCaprio just sitting there defeated. He's very pissed off. And then we get the interaction that blew my mind. This whole last 20 minutes blew my mind. This whole movie was blowing my mind up to this point.
The last 20 minutes is just like, it's like fireworks.
Fireworks. And it is insane. The interaction I just love. They're right about to leave, and Calvin abruptly stops them. And he's like, one more moment.
I insist.
He's all, a deal is not done in this area until the two parties shake hands. You have to shake my hand right now. Otherwise, the deal's off. Interaction. Schultz is like, if I don't shake your hand, you're gonna walk away on $12,000. I don't think so. And he tells Butch, he's like, if they leave here without shaking my hand, you shoot them right now. And he pulls out his shotgun. Tensions are at an all-time
heart was racing like crazy. I was like, oh my god,
I have no idea what's gonna happen. And you can just tell, like, Schultz, that's the last thing he wants to do is shake this guy's hand. It's one thing to interact with them, to get obviously Broomhilda, but to shake this person's hand after everything that he has seen, he just can't do it, and he's not going to do it. And he's like, well, if you insist, and Calvin's like, I insist.
I insist.
And he says it in such an evil way, and Schultz is like, well, if you insist. Then he walks up to him, and he pulls the gun out of his sleeve and shoots.
That's that's awesome.
I had totally forgot that he had that gun in his sleeve up until this moment. When they took their guns away and everything, I was like, there's no way they're getting out of this. And to see,
it's one of the most satisfying deaths, easily.
I'm telling you, people were cheering.
Oh, really?
It was great, and it blew my mind. I remember just being like, what the heck? He shot him. And cuts to this funny shot of Samuel Jackson, Steven. He just screams out. He's all, no. And he runs up to him. It plays out in slow motion as the zoom on his face. He's so pissed off. Calvin's dead now. Obviously, it shot him like right in the heart. And he falls to the ground. And Schultz turns to Django and he's like, I couldn't resist. And Butch just blows him up with that shotgun. He flies into the wall. Man, on retrospect, it is very sad to see that Schultz ends up dying.
Yeah.
But I remember
the revenge got like the best of him.
I remember so being in the moment that it was just like, what the hell is happening? All this stuff just erupts in like a second. And you're given time to each character to kind of show what happens at this climax moment.
Yeah.
And I just was like, holy hell, like what is going to happen? And Django immediately reacts, runs up to Butch, grabs the gun out of his waistline and just shoots him. And he just starts shooting everything in the room. That one kind of, what's his name? The guy with the glasses, he starts freaking out. He starts screaming. He's got a gun. And then he opens the door and you just see his chest just get blown up. I swear. All right.
Oh, yeah.
This is, for me, I've come to this conclusion. I came to it after I first saw it.
Okay.
This is my favorite shootouts in movies I've ever seen. The violence, the sound design, the care to detail, the attention to detail. Keep in mind when you're watching this play out, sometimes in movie fashion, you're shooting guns off and you just kind of pay no mind. Keep a count on Django's gun. You can very much tell when he's out of bullets. He's the gun's out, and that is such an attention to detail that I hadn't seen in a movie. Obviously you see him shooting rounds and things like that, but that was just really great. And the violence in this shootout is just insane. The choreography is great. Like Django jumps back to the guy, falls on him on the floor. Immediately shoots a guy on the stairs. He falls down. And the comedy too, you see the guy with the glasses, he gets shot like 3 different times. Someone else comes out. They see Django. They try to shoot him. Django rolls off of him and the shot hits him and he's like, And it's so funny. And this is just a crazy moment. And these guys burst in the room and they have Django pinned in this area. And again, I love the sound design in the scene. At points, it goes into slow motion. You hear wood shrapnel flying around. You hear the sound of like this bullet like traveling in slow motion of like this whizzing. And then it hits the body and you see this blood splatter everywhere. And it is just such a great payoff for everything we had been seeing. Yet you're still on the edge of your seat because you don't know if he's going to make it out of this situation. And obviously these guys who burst in the room, they're also shooting this. They end up shooting one of their guys on the floor. It's so funny. It's so stupid. And it's just crazy. It is probably the best in a Tarantino movie, the release of tension that I've ever seen. He does that a lot in his movies where obviously builds up tension. Inglourious Bastards, the bar scene, Kill Bill 2, the fight in the trailer, things like that. Yeah, in this movie, it is just done on another level. I just love it so much. And then obviously for me, the mind-blowing moment, these guys burst in the room, they kill a bunch of innocent slaves who were trying to leave, and Tupac starts playing and Django just unleashes hell. I swear it is one of the most satisfying scenes I've ever seen. And again, it calls back into that rap thing. I didn't think I would hear it at that moment. Yet, man, does it work so well. I can't get over it. Every time I watch it, this scene is just like unlike anything I had ever seen.
It leaves you speechless.
And it has not been topped in any way. Obviously, I love the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but this is just, it's different. It's on a different level with the music, the sound design, the performance.
I didn't think it could get crazier after Kill Bill 1, honestly. But no, wow, really, he really like just topped himself with this.
Oh, it's so good. And you can just tell that even if he were to die in this situation, he's going to take out as many people as he can. To him, that's paying back for everything he had been seeing up until that point, everything he had been through in his life. Not only that, watching Schultz die in front of him, knowing that his wife could very much well be in danger at that point. This is just the ultimate payoff of everything you had been watching up until this point. And to have this music playing and everything, it's just triumphant, and you are fully behind Django as a character, Yeah. And it's hard to watch too, because then you start to realize now he's on his own, You know, this is literally him against everyone there.
Yeah.
You have no idea if he's going to make it out. But when the music and everything starts playing, it's like, again, if he doesn't make it out, he's still going to try to get as many people as he can. I love this shootout scene. It's just something I've always come back to many years after watching this movie. Every time I rewatch it, I appreciate everything before it because I know it gets to that scene that this is what we've all been.
It's just such an incredible
what we've
payoff.
been building up to.
Yeah.
You know? I guess, Wallied, what are you thinking with this whole shootout scene and the dinner scene, everything building up? I mean, for me, it's obviously the best that Tarantino has done. I guess, how is it for you?
It's, again, it just leaves you speechless. It's just like, you can't even keep your eyes off the screen. I know for me, I was just like, I am so invested in everything that's happening, and anxiety inducing for sure is what I felt with that dinner scene. And it feels like just all this dread leading up to everything that's happening is just like, it's God, I don't know how he does it, but he portrays it so well. And then especially with the shootout, it just feels like he's finally like breaking out and he's leaving that character behind, and he's just like finally showing his true colors, like, hey, like, I'm this crazy gunslinger basically, you know. And he's just, you know, you can tell he's been holding and restraining himself back, and it's just like, that's kind of how I felt watching it. And just like once that, like, all that tension and everything is gone, it's just like, it's so, man, like I kind of pumped my fists up in there and I'm like, yes, like finally, you know, he's finally like killing all these bad guys, you know, all these people that have wronged him and that he's been wanting to do since he got there to the Candyland place, you know. I love it. I love it very much. And I definitely took it for granted when I first saw it. But yeah, I honestly, for seeing it for the third time, it's just like, man, that scene is like, it's even better when you know all the context and everything that's happening throughout, you know. It makes it even more of a rewarding film to watch, you know, because now you can pick up on all these different small little details that you didn't like the first couple of times. So it's incredible. Like it really, I'm honestly just like, it leaves you so speechless. Like there's really, you just have to see it for yourself, because it's like you can't even put into words just how incredible the whole like second half and climax of it is, you know, honestly.
And during this shootout, again, there's set design is crazy. Literally the walls are like drenched in blood. So many bodies laying everywhere. There's wooden shrapnel. Again, throughout the shootout, Django, like you see on his gun, he very much clearly will fire like 6 shots and then he's out. And then you won't see any more muzzle flash or anything, but he's still like trying to shoot at it because obviously he's probably in the heat of the moment. Not only that, he misses quite a few of his shots in this scene. He's not perfect.
And again, it shows his character really well. He's again like he's a flawed character,
exactly.
You know.
And it's so different from every other movie shootout I've seen where characters have perfect aim or
they have like infinite ammo.
And again, like or the violence, like you just get shot and they fall or whatever. The scene is insane. But he ends up getting captured and basically taken by this mining company. I guess they just buy slaves for them to mine out pretty much people until they die. Which is very brutal. There's
the way he explains it too is just like, God, it leaves you with like a really disturbing picture in your head of like what it is, you know?
And we see a one-on-one between Steven and Django. Django's he's upside down. He literally has been hanging upside down.
He's in the worst place he could be.
The worst place. He probably doesn't know if his wife is alive or not. Like this is brutal.
He's like at rock bottom at that point. And, you know, you even see with the other guy, he wants to almost like cut off his, you know. It's just like, my Lord.
Yeah. Insane. And he gets taken by this mining company and We get a little Tarantino acting.
You know, I was surprised. I didn't hate this one because like that was my least favorite thing about Pulp Fiction was him in it. But I actually kind of liked his character in this, where he has this little Australian accent and everything, and he's barely in it, but it's so funny. And the way he dies and everything, it's just like, oh damn,
he just blows up. And usually, then it shows the again, to student, like Wallied said, student teacher. Now he's starting to see what Schultz was doing. And intellectually, he starts to outsmart these people. And he's going about it in a way that Dr. Schultz would. Very smartly kind of says, there's a fortune at Candyland. I'll go help you get it, this and this. And then he just kills all of them.
Yeah, I was surprised he had killed all of them. I actually thought he was going to go all the way back with them and then kill them. But,
and then it shows the other side of Django kind of becoming a legend of these other fighters seeing him.
Yeah, almost like a folk hero.
Yeah. And then he lets them go and they're freed, you know, and great shots of him going back to Candyland. And while it showed that side of him taking in what Schultz had been teaching him, he goes back to those people who killed D'Artagnan, and he just goes about it his way and he just kills them all.
Yeah.
Which is great. There's like this guy like sitting in like a weird bath in like the middle of the room and he just walks in and just starts blowing everyone up. It's amazing. It's
like short and quick. Yeah, it goes by really fast.
It's rewarding, and he rescues Broomhilda, but he's still going to go back. He's still very much his job could have been done there, but he's going back. Obviously to get the money and stuff as well, but
to get Broomhilda, of course.
And not only that, but also payback for Schultz. There's a great moment where he goes to Schultz, he still has the papers that shows Broomhilda's freed. In an earlier scene, Schultz says Auf Wiedersehen, and he's like, what that actually means is till I see you again. And he's like, to Candy, he's all, since I never wish to see you again, I simply say goodbye. And Django says that to Schultz when he's, getting the papers, and he touches obviously his dead body. And he says, Auf Wiedersehen. That's right. Is such a great moment. Very short, but it just shows
heartfelt.
Shows you the impact that Schultz had on him.
Got me a little bit emotional for sure.
Yeah. And then he goes back to Candyland, and this is a great moment. He's up in the top level, and they're coming back probably after burying Calvin. And they're singing, and then Django comes in singing, and they're all like basically ready to kill him, but he has the upper hand. He pretty much kills them all.
He shoots his wife, or not wife, sister. Sorry,
she like flies back.
He's all, now you guys can go.
Yeah, so funny. And one thing I want to touch on in this moment that I hadn't really noticed up until like further rewatches, Steven, there was a whole other side to him. Obviously, we knew he was intellectually smart. The way he kind of picks apart Django and everything and is able to find out further motives. Mm-hmm. But he has a great moment that I don't really see it being appreciated too much, and I just want to give some light to it. It was actually an act this whole time. This whole thing he was putting on for Calvin and everything. There's a moment where he tries to leave, and the guy's like, Django's like, nah, you, Steven, you stay right there, and everyone else leaves. And now it's another one-on-one moment with Steven and Django. And he drops the cane, and he stands up straight, and he starts talking to Django normally. And you can tell, like, oh shit, this whole time, Steven has been playing that act to get on these people's good side. And he's actually very much smarter than we were led to believe when obviously you're first introduced to him. He's very comedic, this and this. Yeah. But that moment where he drops the cane and he's like, I count 6 shots, and he's talking normally is just like, holy shit. And I remember that now, seeing that just blows my mind. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, he's actually a lot smarter than we were led to believe. But obviously very quickly he gets pretty much killed.
Something too with Steven that I kind of noticed also is like, I'm seeing, as we mentioned earlier, like getting lost into that character and losing the motivation of why you're there. I kind of see Steven as like, he got lost in that motivation with Calvin, with the servants and everything.
That's great.
And that was kind of how I took that character. It's like you kind of see both sides of the coin with Django not being lost in that character. He's like more of a newcomer to somebody who's free, you know, where as you see with Steven, he's like, he's been free for a while and he kind of abuses that power and kind of uses it to like take advantage of others, you know? So that's kind of how I always, at least for me, that's how I viewed Steven's character, especially towards the end. I was like, yeah, this is kind of like somebody who got lost and lost their motivation and like abused their power and just kind of took advantage rather than helping out other people like Schultz did.
Yeah. Wow. That's really great. But again, just in that moment, I don't think people truly appreciate that. Because if it wasn't in there, obviously I'd feel pretty straightforward about Steven. But again, seeing that kind of unveiling of the curtain, I was just like, wow.
There's a lot more to him.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more there.
There's a lot that's beneath the surface for sure with him. And I think it helps when you rewatch it to definitely pick up on it.
But it's great. And then Django ends up killing Steven, blows up Candyland and everything.
Which I think is great because that's actually how the story ended with Schultz with the Broomhilda story is there's like a big fire in the circle, you know?
Wow.
That's why I think that's like a really awesome foreshadowing detail that I picked up on. So it's awesome though.
Yeah, it's great. Music comes in. And there's a little scene of Schultz training Django and he's like pretty much tells Django, you're pretty much going to be a legend with how you are. Like, they're going to call you the fastest gun in the South. And it kind of lends to that folklore kind of story angle, you know?
Oh, definitely.
And it's just great. I love this movie so much. It's one of the few movies where I just rewatch it and it literally could be any time of the day. And if someone put it on or something, I'd have to sit there and I'd have to watch it. I don't know what it is. Again, when I watch scenes from this movie, I'm like, I kind of want to watch the full thing now. And put it on.
Just get like, I'm in the mood for that.
Again, for me, this is perfectly paced. I remember leaving it.
It's nearly 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours.
It flies by. It's ridiculous.
Perfect. I remember going to watch it with a friend after I'd seen it the first time. And I remember I was like, I'm actually not really like...
You don't feel the runtime.
Sometimes I'd be like dreading like a longer movie, like, oh, it's going to be 3 hours, this and this. But with this movie, I was like, I'm actually excited. I'm excited to sit there and be along for the ride and enjoy the runtime. And it's just done so well. Obviously, this movie won Best Original Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor.
Well deserved.
I really wish it would have won Tarantino a Best Directing award, but it's fine. That is kind of the one award he has not won yet. And this movie, there's so much in it to where I'm like, he needs that. He needs that award.
Yeah.
This is for me just filmmaking at its best. And it was, again, a nice way to kind of tie something that's very personal to people, yet you want to do it in a different spin, a different way by bringing in fictional characters and things like that. But you still pay respect towards that group of people, you know? It's something that I feel like only he can do without it coming off as, you know, kind of gimmicky, kind of contrived. Because he's done this 3 times now, and each time it has worked for me. And he's the only one I really see kind of do this kind of rewriting of history kind of stuff, you know? Yet I really love it, and I
think it works though, honestly, just because it's more of like an original story, you know, set in that time rather than it feeling like kind of a gimmick.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like, and also because you can connect with the characters a lot more, at least in Django and in Glorious Bastards, you can, you know, and you're also just really invested in the action and the drama that's going on too. So it definitely doesn't feel like, oh, it's like a rewriting history type of thing, but yeah.
again, with some of my favorite directors, sometimes the ranking does change for my favorite movie, but this one for me has stayed pretty consistent over the past 10 years.
All right. Yeah.
It's just hands down my favorite. It has some of my favorite moments in movies, period. So yeah, for me, it's 10 out of 10. Like, this is just on another level, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you haven't seen it by now, please watch it and let us know what you think. And then watch Tarantino's other movies, and maybe you like some of them better than this one. But yeah, this one it has it all. It has humor, it has stakes, it has drama, it has happy moments, it has sad moments, it has great music, great shots, great character motivations. And again, it's kind of crazy that it's all just kind of based around like a traditional story we would see anywhere else. Yeah. The parts and the way he chooses and how to do it, it couldn't be a better statement of his style. And I just love it. So yeah, Wallied, definitely. What are you thinking?
Yeah. I found it hilarious. There was a random Jonah Hill cameo in there.
We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about the K scene. Oh, I fucked up. I'm sorry.
No worries. You're good. I put it in my notes. I was like, oh yeah, Jonah Hill's there.
That scene was it's so funny
though. I just wanted to mention that before.
I forgot about that. That was so funny. The whole poking the holes in the bag is so hilarious, so stupid. But yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, but for a while I've been writing the Kill Bill being my favorite Tarantino film, but it's this one.
Yeah,
I think I just need to grow up and admit this is my favorite. All of the action's incredible. I love just the whole journey from start to finish. All of the characters are fantastic. All of the acting is just so top notch. Yeah. It's awesome costumes, really great like camera work. It really just connects with me on every emotional level. I'm laughing one moment and the next I'm like genuinely terrified the next. Yep. He blends those emotions super, super well. And honestly, I feel like, people say this a lot about film, but like, especially with this one, they really don't make them like they used to, Yeah, this movie is incredible. I love it so much. And the fact that it's nearly 3 hours is insane to me, and it flies by. Like, there's not a single moment where I'm not invested. Yeah, sorry guys. I know I've been handing them out like candy recently, but it's a 10. It's a 10 out of 10.
It is.
It is genuinely just incredible in every single way. And it's a film that I swear I've rewatched so many times, and I can still pick up on so many different awesome little details. And yeah, it's incredible. The one thing that did surprise me though with this is there was no feet shots in this. I can't believe it. I was actually shocked.
Nice.
No feet shots. So yeah, no, it's a 10 though. It's fantastic. It's incredible. Like I'm sorry, Kill Bill, but this is my favorite.
Yeah.
No
knock to his other movies. Obviously,
they're all great.
have friends, their favorites. This movie, another movie. He really does bring it to the table every time. Obviously, I can't wait to talk about some of his other movies.
Oh, definitely.
Honestly, I'm a big fan of Reservoir Dogs as probably my second favorite. And then obviously Kill Bill is just fantastic.
Yeah. I want to talk about Kill Bill 1 and 2 for sure. So,
and then, obviously Pulp Fiction literally changed movies.
Oh yeah.
And then Inglourious Bastards is another great one. So he brings it to the table every time. But I know for me, we had been mentioning him for a while, but I started seeing scenes of this movie and I was like, I really want to talk about this movie. This movie for me is just
great pick.
Amazing.
Yeah. Very good pick.
So Wallied, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Smacks. There's a lot of films I thought about. You know what? I noticed we haven't talked about a Kurosawa film on the podcast. I want to talk about a film of his. There's a lot to pick from, but I'm going to go with the simple one because I think this movie is just fantastic. Sorry. Another incredible movie from my favorite director ever. I'm going to go with Rashomon next episode.
Nice.
I don't know if you've seen this one or anything.
This one I have not seen, but I've heard about it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's probably my favorite whodunit mystery film probably ever made.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, don't want to hype it up too much. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I really love this film a lot. Try not to look too much into it because I think the best way to kind of go into it is knowing little to nothing about it. So yeah, if you guys don't want to be spoiled for Rashomon by Akira Kurosawa, watch it before the next episode comes out. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
That'll be it for us, guys. Thank you for indulging me on this. We're at like an hour and 40 minutes, but
it's like a Tarantino film.
It's one of my favorite movies. There's so many parts that I wanted to talk about. There was even parts I left out that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, but that's all right.
For my favorite movies and stuff, I could talk about them for literal days and it wouldn't faze me. So I do apologize, but thank you guys for being with us for this long. Let us know what you guys think. Comments, likes, whatever, dislikes, let us know. That's what we care about.
That's all we care about.
That's all we care about. But this is a great movie, so please check it out. And again, if you don't want to be spoiled for the next movie, watch it before next week and let us know what you guys think. But that is it for us.
All right. Good day and good night, mates.
We'll see you on the next one.